Welcome back, everyone, to the reaction end of Action Reaction with me, Zane Simon, and my co-host, Troy O'Diamonds. Troy, how you doing today?
I am not as deep voiced as you are today, but you know what? Maybe we can work on that later. How are you doing today, Zane?
I'm doing well, thanks.
All right, we're back to normal. All right, we're in the swing of things.
So,
love for this to be someone's like first episode of watching this, and they just assume that you talk like this all the time. That's our show.
Yeah, that's our show. Our movie today is... Anyway, we are here to talk about this. Our show this week was exceeding expectations, and that brings us to talking about La Femme Nikita and Cabin in the Woods. Both movies about people placed in difficult situations and forced to exceed the expectations of those around them. And, I just finished Cabin in the Woods, so I do want to hear your thoughts on La Femme Nikita, but I just got to finish watching Cabin in the Woods, and I gotta say, it's a solid, expectations exceeded kind of movie.
Nice. Just for the theme, or also for your expectations for this film?
Mostly for the theme. I think it met my expectations pretty well for the film after the pep talk you gave it.
Okay.
It set me up to pretty high expectations, and it was an interesting. It is definitely a well-executed version of what it is,
Right.
It doesn't really have any points where it falls down or you're like, oh, well, that was an especially dumb part, or that didn't work, or XYZ, Acting is good, writing's good, effects are good, premise is fun, it's well executed. Just a solid movie across the board.
Yeah, and I feel like that's one of the things that I really do want to bring into this show more, are those movies that, it's solid, it's enjoyable, and people will have a good time with it. And this movie is one of those things that if I don't know what I want to watch, and I just want something that I've seen that's familiar that I know is going to be a good time, Cabin in the Woods is one of my go-tos.
Yeah, I can understand that. It's especially, I think, it's a good go-to in that sense because, to a fault, I will say, it really doesn't invest you heavily in any of the characters, or at least the most heavily invested you get really are in the guys underground controlling
right.
it. And so it's very easy to put on and just be like a movie you watch because you're not really going on anyone's emotional journey,
Right, which I feel like is almost deliberate. This movie is meant to be parodying those horror movies where you don't really connect to the characters. They are just these pretty thin stereotypes, and you watch horror happen to them.
Yeah.
It really leans into that in a solid way.
Mm-hmm. So, my only minor complaint in that sense is that I honestly feel like the stoner character didn't quite work as well as he should have as a heroic lead. Because, partially just because they picked somebody who's I don't know, he was just a little not quite stonery enough, I don't know.
I feel like he was a bit cartoonish, like we described him as Shaggy Doo because he is, but also a little bit more realistic of a stoner character than you would normally get, because this is a guy who smokes too much and then gets really paranoid and worries about, oh God, am I too high for everything going on right now?
It's true. I think partially it was just like that they picked somebody who's probably like a model or like almost a model, and then shaggied him up, and then put him in
Yeah.
some clothes that didn't fit, so that it hid the fact that he probably had like a really good body, just a little.
Yeah, that's true.
So it was one of those things where I was like, and I can even see why they did it, because they want you to feel like every character in the house is just this like cookie cutter, replaceable, stereotypical version of a horror movie character. Like they don't want anybody that really actually stands out that much. And it's only really that Channing it's Channing Tatum.
No,
No, Chris
Chrissy
Hemsworth.
Hems.
Chris Hemsworth, the other Channing Tatum.
Yeah.
It's only that Chris Hemsworth, the other Channing Tatum, is Chris Hemsworth, that he stands out.
Right. And maybe this is reading a bit too much into it, but I tend to like giving Joss Whedon a little bit of credit for thinking through things,
Mm-hmm.
at least on like a smaller project like this where he has enough freedom to do what he feels like. And one of the things I like about the good Joss Whedon stuff is he sets up a lot of punchlines, and sometimes well in advance. And he does a lot of work creating an expectation so that he can subvert it later. And I feel like what you're talking about there is a bit of a joke that he kind of put in, where, yeah, obviously the stoner guy isn't going to pay off as the heroic lead in a movie with Chris Hemsworth.
Yeah.
No way. And they did a lot of the very obvious, like subverting Chris Hemsworth being the hero with like unceremoniously dying, just crashing into a wall.
Mm-hmm.
But then also by having the stoner guy be the guy who pulls through.
Yeah, no, they did a good job of really pulling. I mean, they giving you Chris Hemsworth to look at. It's a really good distraction to the idea that anyone else is going to have a major part in this movie.
Right.
Even if you think he's gonna die somehow, you're still magnetically drawn to him and away from everyone else.
Right. You can't avoid it.
Yeah. So we got to talk. I got to talk briefly. Favorite things in the movie. Probably my absolute favorite part of the movie is when Mordecai, the creepy old guy,
Oh yeah.
calls in to report that they're on their way, and they put him on
Oh my
speakerphone.
god. Yeah. The speakerphone bit is hilarious.
And he's like really, really self-conscious about being on speakerphone.
Yeah.
Which is an awesome detail for this insane, rambling old man talking about the harbinger of the end times.
Yeah, and I love that like he's very much a true believer in this old god that we don't know about yet. And it just really leads you down the path of like that slow reveal of like why these guys in the bunker are doing it, while also being really funny.
And it's not, it's part true believer, and it's part like dude that does not want to be on speakerphone while he's ranting and raving about being a true believer.
Yeah, exactly. He's a true believer who lives in a world of technology, and yeah, he believes in like the old eldritch god, and also knows that there's rules for speakerphone. Be polite.
Yeah.
Oh, I love that.
That was pretty fantastic.
Did you have a favorite kill or any like favorite action bit in this? Or you know what? Maybe let me rephrase that. Did you have you're more of a fan of horror than I am. Did you have a favorite horror cameo or allusion or reference in this that?
I definitely like the Hellraiser reference with the little like puzzle sphere and the guy with the big saw blades through his head.
Yep.
And I think honestly though, if you have to have a favorite kill, it's got to be the merman reveal.
The merman is great. Oh my god. And that's again one of those things of when Joss Whedon is on, he set up that punchline in like probably like the first half of the first act of just this
Yep.
guy wants to see a merman.
Yeah.
And then in the third act, near the end of it, the merman, the only time we see it is killing him. It's
Well, and it's not even that just that it's killing him, because that's nice and ironic. It's that it's the most fuck ugly creature you could possibly imagine.
right.
Like, it's
Oh,
not this glorious, like, you imagine this sort of beautiful, sort of Poseidon-y, thing, or at the very least, you haven't seen The Lure yet, but you imagine like these sort of Polish, you know, cannibal mermaid creatures,
right.
but it's just like a fat whale with a person face on it.
Yeah. And I like that they keep leading you through a movie, even when you're not thinking about it. But like 3 minutes before that, a unicorn kills somebody. So like this is a world where there is space for that fanciful merman to be like I mean, you can't cast Chris Hemsworth twice in this movie, but it
Yeah,
could be that like chiseled from granite look. And no, it's this ugly thing. And they even pay off on like what could have been a throwaway line of dialogue earlier where it's like, you don't want the merman. The cleanup is insane. And they still pay off on that with like just this thing sprays blood through its blowhole because why not? You set it up, pay it off. Oh, I love this movie.
Yeah, it was a very good, well done. Like I say, I mean, it's just a very well done delivery on a setup, on a very simple setup, and it delivered really well. No muss, no fuss. I really liked just like they set up the thing with like the bird flying into the force field at the beginning.
Yeah.
And then he jumps into it. Things like that, everything done really clean. The only thing I could have thought might have been better, maybe, and this would be like in my head, would be if they could have really focused only on the infrastructure part of it, and you really only see the kids through like either CCTV or like little tiny bits of setup where like you don't get almost any of them until they enter the subterranean thing, and then suddenly you're introduced to these like super two-dimensional characters that you've been seeing all the time as physical characters in the movie. But you would need to like have a whole different way of casting the movie and forming it.
Yeah, I feel like that's a very different, less funny movie.
Maybe.
I mean, yeah, because I think another part of what I like in this movie is they set up that like all these people are good at their classes, and like there's no like actually anti-intellectual person. They talk about how like even Chris Hemsworth is a guy who's used to studying, and I think studying engineering or something.
No, he's a sociology major.
Yeah. But the fact that he's like, yeah, books are dumb for a second. They're like, what's going on? Like the fact that these kids don't have a chance, it just makes it a little more compelling to me.
No, I don't have it's not really a heavy critique. It's just an idea of like, because the parts of it that I enjoyed the most were really like the underground sort of machinations and like workaday office environment.
Yeah.
It would be kind of fun to just get that until it all starts to go haywire.
I would watch that movie.
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, end of the day, I feel like this is just it's a simple premise with some fun things in it that pays off really well. A bonkers fucking set piece of a third act, and it comes in at a tight like 90 minutes. It's not a long movie.
No.
Yeah, I really like that. one of my least favorite things is action movies that say, oh, we need to be 2 hours. Or now where it's a blockbuster that needs to be 2.5 hours. And we need to do a director's cut. That's 3 hours. No, you don't need a longer movie. You're not putting ad breaks in this shit. You can just tell a tight story in 90 minutes and it'll be fun.
So speaking of which, that's the break for La Femme Nikita, which also comes in at a tight 90 minutes.
Yeah, it's great. It really does a lot with those 90.
What are your thoughts? I need to hear them.
Oh my god. I was a little disappointed from the beginning because there was a character that I really identified with from the start.
Was it Zap?
It was Zap. The guy who just smashes stuff. When they say, "Why'd you do that?" He goes, "I zapped it." I love that guy. He was great. I would have enjoyed a movie just about Zap. It could be like, how many Crank sequels are there? Whatever. Add one to that. Like Crank 5, Zap.
Yeah. No, that could have been like, you could, in a world where anytime you create world building around an action movie, it doesn't automatically just suck. You could have done a fun prequel with that.
Oh, absolutely. I want to know everything about the rest of that guy's life.
But Zap aside,
this movie fucking goes. It is solid. And I mean, the lead actress does some wild decisions that work out so well. Like her eyes are straight up dead for the first, 20 minutes, 30 minutes of this movie.
Mm-hmm.
And it just makes everything she does more puzzling and interesting. It's just a really great performance. Like, even just the weirdness of like when she bites the instructor's ear and then does that really like stiff, awkward dancing with like, again, no expression, dead eyes, and just Mozart starts playing. That is beautiful, awkward weirdness.
And it makes, what I love about that is then the transition to this sort of like bombshell assassin, it feels like a real transition. Like, you don't feel like you're getting a very pretty woman uglied up in the beginning. Like, oh, we put glasses and a sweater on her and now she's dumpy.
Yeah, exactly. This isn't like Freddie Prinze Jr. fixing her up.
No. Like, the transition is actually like a night and day. It feels like somebody who actually, it feels like a person that pulled their life together in a remarkable way and not just, I'm different now.
Yeah. And one of the things that I thought was both well done, if not a little heavy-handed at some points, was how much her environment reflected her growth. Where they start her off in just like shitty, empty cell.
Mm-hmm.
Or after the police take her in, she's in like a shitty, empty cell. Then it's like weird, awkward art and drawing and kind of like just graffiti with whatever she could get her hands on. And you just see her material conditions improve throughout the movie.
Well, and the thing I really think was really especially well done with that is, so, I can see what you mean where it's heavy-handed when she like suddenly has this very swank cell.
Right, yeah.
But the thing, like, you have to think about that too, is that, like, as somebody who's basically been kept in prison for 3 years, like, the material is like super important there of like having that transitional growth. And then when she goes to the outside world, a lot of that fades way back. Like,
right.
Because she immediately starts dressing schlumpy again. Like, you see her in like these big oversized sweaters and like dressing down to a more comfortable level, getting paint all over herself, just trying to like fix stuff up, being messy and not caring. And so there's part of it that's like, it's a mask that was built in those conditions and that falls back to something more natural the moment those conditions are removed.
Yeah, and that was one of the things that I did like about it was it gives you basically like two different journeys. There's her journey through like the rehabilitation in prison and getting like the swanky setup there, and then when she's released, she is again back at the floor of material conditions in the regular world. She doesn't have her place that looks like a palace in prison anymore, because quite frankly, the best palace in prison is it's a palace in prison.
Yeah.
And the shitty apartment that she's not done painting yet is still an improvement over whatever imprisonment can offer. And then you take that same journey again through watching her apartment get nicer.
Yeah. And, you know, then, and it's like she, you know, gets to develop like actual human relationships and all these things. And the way that, like, one of the things I love about that movie is the way that they keep undercutting her success with like these minor failures and with these emotional failures of things that are still like totally unresolved. With like, you know, a lot of the shit she's doing is still, and the way she's pulled into it is still really traumatizing.
Right. And they don't shy away from that. Like, even from the very start, even before, like, when she's sentenced and she's being dragged away to, I'm pretty sure it's before she's supposed to be supposedly executed.
Mm-hmm.
But just the way that trolley shot goes long and lingers, that was a really good shot that made you feel the trauma that the character is supposed to be feeling there. Like that's the sort of thing where I'm like, oh yeah, no, you're right. Luc Besson can do good director things,
like
when he tries.
This is the movie that like validates his ability to be a great director. It is the one like true piece of art he has created, where everything else is this like, even things like The Fifth Element, which I like, or The Last Battle, which I like, or Leon the Professional, which I like, are all kind of pale imitations of this.
Yeah, they're all very flawed in different ways. Although the one thing that I realize Luc Besson really loves is traumatizing skinny women with abs and showing their stomach. Like, my God, is that his jam?
Oh,
that hasn't gone away. That is from here. That is Fifth Element. That is Lucy. That is his entire. That's his thing. That, like the way Quentin Tarantino will shoot Uma Thurman's feet, that is the way Luc Besson is with skinny women's abs.
It's true. It's true. So,
and like, God bless him. You know what? I will not deny a man's right to be horny.
Oh, that's the other thing I liked about Parlat in this part, more than I liked about Jovovich or the other women that he's chose. Like I say, I think he's kind of also not been able to get anybody as good as her. Is
right.
That she also looks and comes off as like legitimately super fit. Like,
yeah,
she actually looks really ripped in a lot of the parts of this movie where you're like, okay, no, she actually must run triathlons or something.
Yeah, I thoroughly believed at every point in the action when she's like jumping over a table or a counter in the kitchen or something. Yeah, no, I believe she can do that. That is 100% something she looks like she can and regularly does do.
Yeah, she's perfect for the role. So then I gotta ask you. So, like I said, you know, you kind of get this whole. It's a series of build-ups. What do you think about the teardown in the last act, where they're basically just everything starts getting ripped away from her?
It's impactful. I mean, that's one of the real things that you can say about this movie is the way that they showed you her development in the first act in prison and in the second act actually becoming like a human on the outside again. And you get really invested in, like, you do want her to win. You don't want her to keep getting pulled back into this world, and you don't want her to keep getting traumatized by this shit. You're kind of mad at Jean Renault for everything he does, even though in any other movie, if he did the exact same things, he is just Jean Renault being a badass.
Yeah, you're like, oh yeah, that's badass. And in this movie, you're something like, holy shit. He's like dissolving a live person in a bathtub full of acid in front of this woman.
Yeah, when all she wants is to get through the mission and to get away and to like get back to a normal life.
Yeah.
It's I don't know. It's also really impactful because from the beginning, she has nothing. All she cares about is getting her next fix, and anything impeding her from that just doesn't matter. To oh my god, she can actually like thrive. It's not like a movie about her surviving. She could actually live and thrive, and you're watching that be just agonizingly torn away from her.
Yeah. Which, I mean, it makes it, like, I love, too, that the movie ends with her just leaving and just being like, nope, I'm out.
Yeah. Yeah.
Because
That's,
you want her to end up with the dude. Like, that's the happy ending and all that. And it's just like, how could you go back to that after doing something like that last mission? Like, how could you go through that and then be like, no, I'm just going to go home to this dude and wait for my next mission to start?
Yeah. She made a very logical decision that isn't necessarily like the best or most expected narrative payoff. Like, you know, if this movie was made today, then it would go like Looper. There would be somebody who kills all the bad guys, and then it's like, you're free now, and go with the guy. I mean, this movie doesn't do any of that. There's still criminals. There's still this guy trying to live his best life, and she's just gone because that's her only way out of this horrible scenario after she experienced just another brutal trauma.
Yep. It's a remarkable action movie. Like I say, I mean, it's one of my top, top 20, 30 movies all time.
Yeah. And I mean, we're talking a lot about like just the themes and the characterization here. There's really great action in this movie.
Yeah.
Like that restaurant scene is amazing.
It
does a lot of little things really well. I mean, first off, there's just a natural thing that I noticed where, oh, there's people coming to kill her after she shot people. She takes off her heels. She runs barefoot like a smart person.
Mm-hmm.
That's again part of why, like, even like we were talking about earlier, she's ripped. We believe she can do things. She's very competent.
Yeah.
She isn't like trying to look like a femme fatale when she's in a shootout. She knows what she's doing. And then even in the middle of that, when she's like taking out all these dudes in an industrial kitchen and gets pinned down, there's still that visual joke of mid shootout, just a bunch of fucking pasta falls on her. Like that's like you were saying about how this movie gives her stuff and then undermines it.
Mm-hmm.
To me, that was just a great like quick moment of it. Of like, no, this is still messy and ugly and awful. No matter how good she is and how much we're rooting for her in this scene to just do all the murder, she's still scared and it's a mess. It's bad.
Yeah, like the guy comes in with the grenade launcher and shoots a grenade, and so she has to jump down the trash chute. She ends up covered in trash,
head first into like just rotted vegetables.
And that's like then she has to like stumble out into the street alone at night and walk back to her prison cell.
Yeah, I mean, this movie really does a lot with that character, and like none of it feels like it's just like being brutal to a female character because that's a thing to do. I mean, it actually works. This movie is good.
She's hyper competent too. I mean, that's the thing, is that it's not like, oh, she's being brutalized and she, it's not like the woman who, it's not like Sicario, where what's her name?
Emily Blunt.
Blunt.
One of the top 3 action heroes working today. She is top. If you're making an action movie, if you're anybody listening to this is writing an action movie, cast Emily Blunt in it. I don't care what the role is. Cast Emily Blunt. She's fucking amazing.
So you have Emily Blunt, who's amazing, and her competency in that movie is constantly undermined. But it's also undermined to the point that she never actually has any success.
Right.
Like, she just sort of fails along until they switch the story to Benicio del Toro.
Right. And then he comes back to like further brutalize her character.
Yeah.
Like she's just an object of torment in that. Where Nikita is really the opposite. Like she doesn't
want to do the things she's doing, but she's successful. Like they suck and they're difficult and they're way harder than they should be, but it's not it's not like, oh, and then she fails because she's a woman who's not actually capable of surviving in this world.
She can't see the big picture. She can't recognize that a guy played by she can't recognize that a character played by John Bernthal is a bad guy. That is incompetence. Come the fuck on.
Yeah, it's one of the like it is one of the great, and it's weirdly like, you know, in an age where Wonder Woman is sort of heralded as one of the few great female action stars or like action figures in cinema. Right. It's amazing how much this movie is not a part of that narrative, even to the point that somebody like Ripley in Alien is a part of that narrative. Like, La Femme Nikita is just sort of this forgotten thing where she's honestly one of the strongest female action action characters in film history.
Yeah, and I mean, we can go into a whole feminist critique about like, was she just a woman being put into a role that would be masculine like Ripley was? I don't think so. I think this movie is a little deeper than that. And I would say Wonder Woman fails at that, and it fails at a lot of other things as a movie because it's okay. It's not really good. But I do think that this movie does deserve a lot more praise. Like, this should be in the pantheon of just great action movies. And the fact that it has a really well done, like, fully fledged female lead in it, I'm suddenly wondering if that's part of why it's less accepted, or I mean, or if it's just everyone's like, oh, it's another Luc Besson.
Yeah, or if it's just like, oh, it's in French. I don't know.
Yeah, but I mean, there's a lot of people I know who will ride out for Ong Bak or The Protector, or the even The Raid. All of those are great action movies, like The Raid most so. But I feel like this is a movie that deserves to be considered, alongside like the actual greats.
Yeah, it also you gotta admit has an amazing fucking score.
Oh, the score is so good. Oh man, this movie's great. We could probably just keep gushing about this forever. I really like it. There's so much good stuff. She gives somebody a mouse in a box as a present. It's just a mouse in a box. There's some great like learning how to use a computer in 1990. It's hilarious. And I mean, I was born online. Like, instead of my birth certificate, they gave me like a Netscape subscription, a GeoCities page, and a blog on Zynga. And so, like, watching her figure out a computer, like, oh, this is what a mouse is? That's great. It's really charming and fun in the same way that it was supposed to be when it originally came out. This movie works on so many great levels.
It really does. It is one of the, and like I say, for a 90-minute action film, it uses every moment of those 90 minutes to tell you a story at some point. Like, you are going through multiple transitions for a person over the course of 90 minutes, and they all work and they all fit into this narrative of who this person is and what their growth looks like and what their story is. And it's just not like, I see that and I marvel at how little Luc Besson has been able to accomplish after that.
Yeah, it's amazing. Like, every decision, I mean, I've only seen this once, but on my first way through it, it felt like every character's decision making was motivated. There was never any time where you're like, well, this decision doesn't make any sense, or this is a sudden revelation for this character that doesn't seem to be inspired by anything. No, like you said, it's a really tight script that makes the most of every minute of this movie.
I also really loved, and it's, one of the reasons too is it's not just like a woman in a man's world kind of, in a man's role kind of thing. Because I really love the scenes, like the sort of crossover scenes of her with, it's a famous French actress actually, whose name I'm trying to remember now. Oh, damn it. her.
I mean, famous French actress just sounds like an oxymoron to me.
I know. Damn it. It's because unfortunately this whole cast is her with Jean Moreau, who
Oh, is
played.
that the like stylist person?
Mhm.
Okay.
And
Yeah,
she was
she's
a
great.
very famous French New Wave actress, known for Elevated to the Gallows and La Notte and Jules and Jim and The Bride Wore Black, and just a very famous figure in French cinema at the time, over historically. And just the way that they like used her and her status to play off of that sort of development of this feminine ideal was super well done.
Yeah, that was a really good part of the movie to me too. It was like when to me that's when Nikita is saying like, okay, no, I'm gonna do this. I'm gonna try. I am going to be like this hyper competent person, or not even hyper competent. She's just very competent, and to me, that's when she leans into it. Is with that speech of like, I forget the exact line, but it's basically like, yeah, you can manipulate your femininity. That's a useful thing that you can use on top of all the other good shit you can do.
Yeah, there's no limit there's no limit to femininity, and there's no limit to the things that you can do, like to the things you can expose with it.
Yeah. Oh, this movie rules.
It does. It's such a fantastically amazing film, and yeah, it's the reason that I don't. I'll put this out there, is it's the reason that I don't love Leon the Professional, because honestly, like, I don't need it. I
Yeah,
realize you have your Gary Oldman fetish, and that makes it a whole different bag.
right. To be fair, I can watch that movie of just Gary Oldman scenes and be really happy with it.
Yeah, but otherwise, to me, like, this is just, it's such a perfect action movie. And
Yeah, it's great. And there's also a fun little treat in there for modern audiences, especially American audiences, where she basically from 26 years in the past quotes Donald Trump and says, "My little Marco." And that just made me laugh hysterically.
oh Lord.
I gotta believe Luc Besson was just owning Marco Rubio from the past.
There you go. I mean, who wouldn't? And like, how any opportunity anyone can take to do it, they should.
Absolutely, I fully endorse it. It's great.
All right. So, any final thoughts then before we close out our mini episode?
No, I think fuck Marco Rubio is a perfectly good place to end.
All right. Well, on that note, you can find me at Zane Simon, at Zane Simon on Twitter. Fuck Marco Rubio. You can find Troy at PDL MMA on Twitter. Fuck Marco Rubio. Subscribe to our YouTube page and SoundCloud. Fuck Marco Rubio, and also like our service, like our videos, our shows, our podcasts, all that good stuff. Fuck Marco Rubio, whenever you can.
And you know what? Tweet our show to Marco Rubio.
Sure.
Yeah, just tell Marco Rubio, hey, I watched or listened to a podcast about action movies. You'll probably like Marco Rubio.
All right. On that note, fuck Marco Rubio, and we'll be back soon with another episode of Action Reaction. Thanks, everyone.
He's on Twitter at Marco Rubio.